Hey, welcome back to another episode of Chad Fixes All. In this episode, we're continuing to work on the Civic, and we're just going over what we did last time with the power steering removal, exhaust manifold removal, a lot of electrical connectors. Also took out that fuel rail and the coolant hoses. But let's go ahead and dive right back into this. And we're going to start by taking off that front driver's side wheel to get to the harmonic balancer. Now whenever jacking up the car, make sure to use jack stands to securely raise the vehicle and be safe under it if you need to get under it, or to prevent from falling. Now inside the wheel well, we're going to be taking out this plastic clip to remove the splash shield. There's two of them. And then we can go ahead and just pull that down out of the way, and that exposes the harmonic balancer. We'll go back up into the engine bay to remove the engine mount over on the driver's side. It's held in by 3 bolts. They're quite tough. I'm using a breaker bar. And then after I use the breaker bar to break them loose, we can then throw some penetrating fluid on them and zip them out with the gun. Now back down to the wheel well. Let's go ahead and take that harmonic balancer bolt out. Maybe. Let's use a little bit more pressure this time. Alright, 110 pounds of pressure isn't working on the air compressor, so I guess we'll just come back to that. So back up in the engine bay here, we're going to take out the speedometer cable holder. That's a bracket that holds the speedometer cables near the throttle body. We're just going to remove them from the throttle body connector, just pulling them out of the little sleeves. There's 2. One's for the cruise control, one's for the gas pedal. And now we'll focus on the alternator. There's 1 bolt on top. And then there's this bolt on the bottom. I'm using a long extension to reach up in there with a swivel socket and trying to get that swivel socket on there, and oh, there it is. And we'll just zip it out. And the nut went flying. So now with the 2 bolts out, you can see that the belt is now loose, and we can go ahead and take our pry bar and pull the alternator away from the mounting bracket. And once it drops out of the mounting bracket, you can then remove the alternator from the belt and then pull it up out of the engine bay. Maybe if you can hold on to it, unlike I did. There we go. Now it came out. This one seems in pretty good shape. We'll just be reusing it. Now we'll go ahead and remove the alternator belt. And then there's this bracket where the alternator connects to. There also is the bracket for the engine mount. There's going to be 5 bolts holding it on, 3 in the front, 2 on the side. The 3 in the front are pretty easy to get to, but the 2 on the side are a pain. But using a ratchet and twisting them out with my fingers, I was able to get both of those bolts fully loosened, and then you can then pull that away from the engine, and then you can see all the bolts here. So there's the 2 bolts on the side, and then the other 3 were in the front. Now since we have a new timing belt that we're going to be installing on this, we're just going to go ahead and cut the old one. So I'm holding the timing gear at the top with a ratchet so it doesn't spring back. And then go ahead and cut it and remove it. Next, we're going to go ahead and take the head bolts out of the engine, but we need to take them out in the correct order. So this is the removal order. Make sure you go in order so that way you don't warp the head coming out. And then once we have them all busted loose by hand, we can go ahead and use the gun to zip them out the rest of the way in the same order. Now with the head bolts out, we can go ahead and work on this water coolant hose that goes into the thermostat housing. This was kind of a pain because there's not a lot of room to really work with, so I ended up taking the back hose clamp off and then pulled it away from there. Then I'm going to pull the exhaust manifold away again. And then with a lot of time and effort and pry bars, we are going to attempt to pull this head with the intake out of the engine bay. In the last episode, I mentioned to you about how the intake bolts were giving me a hard time, not the top ones, but the bottom ones. Well, that's the reason we're pulling the intake with the head. If I didn't have to do that, this would be a lot easier to pull, but since I do have to, it was a pain. But it is possible, so we worked it all the way out, and we're going to go ahead and remove it here. So there we go. Go ahead and pull the whole entire head with the intake out, leaving just the bare block, the cylinder head gasket, and the other parts you see here. Now, taking first look upon the cylinder head gasket, I'm not really seeing where it failed. My friend said that it was overheating. I just took him on his word, so I went ahead and pulled the head and replaced this gasket. But this is a Felpro gasket, so you can tell that this has been done once before, and he mentioned that it has been, so glad to see that it actually is a good quality gasket back that they put back on this. But I mean, even looking at the head and the block, everything looks great. We're going to be cleaning it up ourselves too in the next episode, but I mean, so far everything looks good. Now, remember that old pesky harmonic balancer from earlier? Well, we're coming back at it because we need to take this off so we can get to the timing belt. So there's a tool for this. This is the tool right here. I'll make sure to link in the description. It's a special Honda Civic or Honda engine tool that holds the harmonic balancer, and so that way you can get enough leverage on the bolt to take it out. This is very common with all Hondas. These are in there very, very, very tight, and they just get worse over time. So the part just goes into the hexagon shaped hole. Then using a ratchet or breaker bar, you hold it in some way or another. I chose to use a ratchet with a jack handle attached to it, so that way it will hold against the car body. And then I got my breaker bar out with a couple of long extensions, and still after a ton of effort, this thing was still a pain. And I do end up getting it broken loose, but it wasn't fun. But I mean, this really is going to end the episode here. If this video really helped you out or anything like that, be sure to check out the 2 episodes before that if you haven't. Also subscribe to see the ones coming up in the future. Also throw it a like, it really helps me out. Check the description for the part that we're using right here for the engine harmonic balancer holder. Thanks for watching.